Megan's about to go on her summer holidays, so the last thing she wants is a German official called Klaus warning her about her winter heating bills. But Germany is on the brink of a gas crisis, so we have special guest energy expert Izzy Choksey to keep us calm. If anyone can help, it'll be Economy Minister and noughties romcom star Robert Habeck. Skol!
Hello everyone! It's time for another Megan's Megacan. I'm Megan. I'm here with Conrad Werner.
Hello.
And yes, there's a delay because someone is on the other microphone. And we're very, very, very excited to have Izzy Choksey back with us. You were a guest with us. Hello, Izzy.
Hello. Hi, Megan.
You were a guest before. You came on before the election to talk about Klimalister and climate, and you were so inspiring and amazing. And loads of people have been saying to me and to us, I think, how great you were. So we're very excited to have you back.
Well, thanks very much for having me back on.
Thanks for coming on this very hot Sunday.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't really help, did it, with the Klimalister? They got like 0.5% of the vote in Berlin.
Yeah, I think it was sort of I was one vote out of 1,004.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if those are the correct figures, but it was a pretty low vote share in the end.
How was the Klimalister election night party?
I wasn't part of it.
There one?
I did not go.
Okay.
I heard that it was quite a lot of fun. But yeah, I voted Klimalister for what it's worth. But Izzy,
that's worth a lot.
In addition to being a climate enthusiast, you're also on Radio Spätkauf,
yeah,
which is another Berlin-based news podcast. If you like facts, more facts, and a very professional show that is also entertaining, I would suggest checking it out. What else are you up to?
I'm also up to, so I just started, next to my full-time work, I also do some tour guiding. So I used to be a tour guide in Berlin for about 6 years and gave that up after the pandemic ripped away tourism from the city. And I've just started up doing these social movement tours. So I've been doing those for a few months now, so about 4 months. And the social movement tours are tours where I get to talk about Berlin through this very specific prism of social movements. So this tour that I've created is a tour of social movements from 1848 until 1919, so Karl Marx to Rosa Luxemburg. And we just walk through Mitte and go to various different points, and I talk about why Berlin happened to become the city with the largest social movements in the whole of Europe. So what is it about the city that made it so popular for left-wing movements and social movements?
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
We should all go on your tour.
Well, you can.
I think we need to keep the socialist spirits of Berlin alive.
Please
and kicking.
Come.
When is your next one? How can people come?
So the next one is going to be at 2 p.m. on the 16th of July. So that's in 2 weekends' time. And we're going to meet at the Martin Luther statue right next to Alexanderplatz. So it's in front of the Marienkirche. I think 1848 and 1919 are useful places to bookend because they're such big stories. But the idea is also to really pick up the story of like what's really happening in Berlin and why is it generating so many social movements in the mid-1800s at a time when industrialization is really getting going. So that's kind of why I picked a date that's also it's well known, it's attractive, it's interesting. I obviously tell the story of the 1848 revolution, the failed revolution of 1848. But the idea is to really capture that moment in history and try to understand why you have a social movement and what that failed revolution actually generates in the next 70 years up until the next failed leftist revolution of 1919. And I'll eventually get to a failed revolution of today.
And hopefully someday you'll be talking about the, third time's the charm, Berlin. Shall we have some booze? Yay!
Yay!
All right. I sort of went on a summary theme. Izzy, as our lovely guest, you can choose between. Now, listen up.
Okay.
Havana Club, Cuban rum mixed with lime.
Sounds terrifying.
Sounds summary.
I think I had that one last time, so I'm going to pass.
Did you? Havana Club, Cuban spiced and cola. Cuban rum, tropical fruit flavors, spices and cola.
Yes.
This is a limited edition and the can is very beautiful. We had it recently. I can't remember if we liked it or not. And the Jack Daniel's Lynchburg lemonade.
I kind of want the Lynchburg lemonade.
Yes, that's a good
please.
choice.
But I am very attracted to the can, so I feel like whoever gets the really sexy Havana Club.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, Jesus.
That'll do it. That slips down very nicely.
The Lynchburg lemonade is a really good one.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a professional. I mean, it's. I feel like this is the kind of can that's going to somewhere have a date on it, and that date is going to be a long time ago. I'm happy with this.
This is fine, but it doesn't taste very limey. I mean, I'm drinking rum in the day. What can be bad about that? What's happening? We're going to have to talk about the news.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I can always feel you trying to avoid the news at the beginning of the podcast. There's always a moment where I have to like get you over that bump. It's like
trying to avoid talking about
I know. I think it's like we're the podcast where we don't really want to talk about the thing that we're here for. But anyway, what we're here for and why we've got Izzy on.
Yes.
Is because we want to talk about the energy crisis. And it's a little bit topical because only yesterday, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz gave he put on he does a video podcast, a video cast, and he said,
what?
Yeah, he does a weekly,
seriously,
like an address.
Who watches? Who's the audience?
Merkel did one too. It was a thing. Yeah, they all did. It's the thing that they do.
Is this like the King's speech, the Queen's speech, or something, where they address their publicum?
Angela Merkel did a wee speech on a video every week.
Did anyone see her Q&A that she did recently?
No.
For a paid audience in a theatre. That was a delight. It was so interesting to see her speaking after 6 months.
Yeah, it was
no
her
one
first
hearing from her.
Public appearance. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think what was interesting is that if you compare it to Scholz, it was just a completely different kind of. It was a politician with so much talent for politics.
Yeah.
And I think I realised like why I didn't have anything against her for so long, you know. She's like a snake charmer.
Well, yeah, and she was justifying the fact that she kind of kept Ukraine out of the EU and all that, so she had to like justify that. I think it's actually.
Yeah, she said a bunch of really controversial stuff in such an insanely charming way that no one really noticed. It was like, oh,
yeah,
Angela.
Well, anyway, on Scholz's weekly podcast, which we're all going to be watching from now on, he said the German population needs to link arms and stick together because of the rising cost of living crisis in Germany. Food and prices generally have gone up by about 7.6% since June. Yeah, and also German top energy official Klaus Müller from the Bundesnetzagentur, the Federal Network Agency. He's the man who's kind of in charge of Germany's power grid. He said that what might happen is that Putin might just turn off the gas next week on July the 11th because there's a scheduled maintenance happening on Nord Stream 1. It's supposed to go for 11 days, but Putin might just keep it off forever. So things are going quite badly. And we might all... He said... Yeah. And he said we have 12... He also said we have 12 weeks left before the heating season begins.
Klaus, I understand your job sounds like my fucking nightmare, and I'm sure you do a great job because most of the time the gas works. Good for you. Do not start talking about the beginning of the heating season when I'm about to go on summer holidays. Mm-hmm. Fucking
well
CNA the other day, and over there like loudspeaker came an ad about Einschulung and like the back to school thing. Just
killing everyone's fun.
Just deal with it, and if it can't be dealt with, let me know in September.
So, Izzy, are we all going to freeze in the autumn?
So here's why I don't think Putin is gonna. I mean, this is like exclusive content on Putin's mindset here.
Good. I'm excited.
Yeah, just to backtrack. So I work for a think tank, an energy-focused think tank, climate-focused think tank, and I work specifically on coal policy and also do some gas policy as well. So I have like a bit of a front row seat to all of this stuff. And here's why I don't think Putin's going to turn off the tap completely. Because what he's doing at the moment is messing with the volumes. So we're currently down at 40% of capacity through Nord Stream 1, which is the pipeline that services a lot of the gas that's coming from Russia to Germany. We're currently at 40%, which basically means that we cannot fill our storage tanks as quickly as we could have done if we were at 100%. And filling the storage tanks is what the entire government is now obsessed with at the moment, which is fair enough because filling the storage tanks is absolutely essential to us not freezing in the winter. And they're currently at about 57 to 60%. We need them to be around 90 to 100% in order to get around 2.5 months, so it's 85 days worth of gas. If Putin decides to completely halt all exports of gas through Nord Stream 1, then we would have around 85 days worth of gas if we filled up those storage tanks to 90 to 100%. But currently they're getting filled a lot slower because the gas that's coming through is now basically mostly being used in where it is being used. It's being used directly, and that means it's being used in the industry. It's being used in the various different, parts of the economy that absolutely need it, not necessarily through heating, but through cooking. For instance, a lot of people have gas cookers. They're using those. They can't stop using them. And you also have heating systems as well that run on gas. So a lot of the gas that's currently coming in is being used, which means less can be stored. So that's what the government is getting really, really worried about, the inability for us to actually fill up our storage tanks. And the reason I think that he's not going to stop it completely is because if he stops it completely, then Germany has absolutely no choice whatsoever. It has to diversify, or it has to go through an incredible energy savings campaign. And it will probably result in the loss of possibly like thousands of jobs if he stopped it completely. But it's a brutal hit, right? And that is something that the German government currently has the economic ability to counteract. I mean, yeah, it's going to be really tough, and it's going to be a kind of like Corona scale event where, for instance, like no one necessarily was weeping tears for the tourism industry that completely went under during Corona. I mean, people were aware that tourism completely sunk, but now it feels like the gas industry has done a really good job of promoting, for instance, the chemicals industry and saying what kind of a terrible world we would live in without them. And that's true, and they have knock-on effects as well. So chemicals industry goes out, you can't, for instance, put paint on cars and stuff, so then that would have an effect on manufacturing in other different parts of the economy. But it would kind of be this moment in time that would probably be a situation solved within about 5 to 6 months once we were able to diversify. What Putin wants is long-term or semi-long-term high prices, and us paying those prices because the alternative is unacceptable for a population. And in order to do that, you have to create instability in the market. So this move that he made 2 weeks ago to lower it to 40% has already had like a dramatic effect on gas prices, and it's already also had a dramatic effect on policymakers as well. And then this planned maintenance, which is the argument that Russia is saying is that they needed parts from Siemens that they can't get hold of because of the embargoes. So it's a direct kind of like, you lower the embargoes and we'll give you this gas. That's not going to happen. The embargoes are going to stay in place. But what Putin achieves is he manages to get another real hit to the system, which will have another direct effect on gas prices. And gas prices are not coming down anytime soon. So it's going to increase the price of gas, which has a knock-on effect on inflation. So, I mean, this is like midterm destabilization of a country. Germany has promised to get out of Russian gas by 2024. That's 3 years before Europe. So Europe has something called the Repower EU plan that is being finalized at the moment. And that's a plan to get off Russian gas by 2027. But Germany has said we're going to do it by 2024. So Putin basically has the next 2.5 years or 2 years to get as much revenue as possible. And the best way to do that is not stopping gas immediately. It's to create a system where he'll probably be getting 5 to 6 years worth of revenue because of the extremely high prices. So currently we're getting a lot less volume than we were, but we're paying around about the same or more than we were a year ago.
I guess he is still trying to be strategic, I suppose. Just his strategy is not particularly working.
I think his strategy is working in some ways, but it's limited in others. It's got a limited amount of scope. Like, so if he was really trying to break the embargoes, he probably would be doing something different. So what he's doing instead is to get as much as he can in the time that he has left to fund his military, and then try to diversify the exports over to China and India as fast as possible. So currently there's this gas pipeline that's being built between China and Russia. That's expected to go online in 2025, 2026. So you've got these alternative plans that are in place, but he needs, for the next couple of years, is to make as much money from Europe as possible in order to fund the war in Ukraine. So that's why these midterm policies are not going to be as drastic as the most drastic people say.
Okay.
But what the German government and what Bundesnetzagentur is doing is they're preparing for a large-scale energy efficiency drive that will probably come about in September. They're preparing the German public and they're preparing industry
I'm ready
as
for this
well.
in September. Just don't fucking talk to me about it at the beginning of July. Just let us have our summer.
And isn't there like a 3-stage emergency plan? Mm-hmm. And we're on stage 2.
We're on stage 2. We got to stage 2 when he went down to 40%. So when Nord Stream 2 went down to 40%, then Habeck announced at the beginning of last week, I think, that we went up to stage 2.
And what does stage 2 mean?
It means that there is a certain amount of readiness that is required of industry and gas networks, and also plans put in place for industry to sell back their gas supplies to gas providers so that they will engage in more energy efficiency measures. And it also means that the government is able to kind of retake companies that are seen as hostile to the energy security. So, for instance, this really comes into account when we consider like how much of the gas storage was owned by Gazprom in Germany, which is obviously a hostile entity. So that was the Energy Security Act was put in place so that various measures can be enacted in order that Germany is able to store as much gas as it can and also take as much of that storage space as possible. And
so basically seize it from Gazprom.
Yeah.
Seize the tanks. And stage 3 would happen presumably sometime in the autumn. And that eventually, maybe, and that would be like red alert, wouldn't it? And that means that certain industries would have to shut down.
I think it would be like mandated efficiency measures and mandated energy savings.
Yeah.
I think the number that's being touted at the moment is around 10 to 15% energy savings. And yeah, that's most likely what all of this is leading up to, right? The politicians are really starting to engage in quite serious language, and you said like Scholz on his video podcast talking about it, Habeck's talking about it almost every day. You got the Bundesnetzagentur talking about it. So there's a sense that the German public are being prepared for an energy efficiency campaign that's not going to be voluntary. We currently have a voluntary energy efficiency campaign that's coming out from the government, which is trying to get people to like lower their gas and to take short showers, I think is the, go down from 10 minutes to 5 minutes.
And check your boilers.
Check your boilers.
Maintenance checks can reduce gas consumption by 10 to 15%. According to Klaus Müller.
Exactly. So these are all sort of like on the individual level. And that's, I think, how to soften up your population for like mandatory measures that will be made later.
And it's sort of interesting, I think, because obviously we live in I've lived a very privileged and sheltered life in very developed countries where I've really not had to suffer anything other than sort of 2 years of the corona restrictions. And I wonder if in a way it's kind of like, yeah, we can probably suck that up. But
do you know what else Klaus Müller said? I've just seen this quote now. It's quite funny.
I'm loving Klaus's work. What's he saying?
He said, "We cannot class every business as essential," adding that public swimming pools are probably not in the critical sector, just like the production of chocolate cookies.
Ooh.
He's kind of like our dad.
My dad was way more crack than that. Oh, Klaus. Mind you, he has to have this role, doesn't he? You don't want someone like, sort of like me, running the network. I'm like, it'll probably be grand. Yeah, live in the moment. Life is short. Well, I lived without central heating for ages because Achilles are shit. So it was really unpleasant, and I hope people don't have to do it. And it was fine just for me, and I had hot water as well. It's just awful. I don't know how people that have families and who are in precarious financial situations anyway. Everything is just so expensive.
It's all at once, yeah.
Flights are...
Izzy, can we talk about Robert Habeck?
Yes.
So
what
Robert
do you
Habeck,
want to talk about?
He's been going around the Middle East buying liquid natural gas terminals for cities, isn't he? Because we need to replace the gas.
He has been on a shopping spree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what else has he been doing?
He's been doing a lot. Robert Habeck has been working it recently. He is the economy... So halfway through a Megacan.
I feel like Izzy's a bit flustered with the mention of Robert Habeck, as we all are. He's... How would we describe him? Let's not say what he does. Let's just talk about what he looks like for people who don't know.
He looks very nice.
He does. He looks like the sort of lead character kind of like one of those Hugh Grant comedies, but better.
Yeah.
Like kind of a bit disheveled, but like has a good job.
With standing up hair. Very noughties. Standing up hair.
Yes.
If Colin Firth had standing up hair.
There is a bit of a bang of Colin Firth off of him.
He reminds me more of like an overgrown skater boy. Yeah.
Yes, who sort of put a shirt on against his will.
Totally.
He is the Minister for the Economy and the Environment.
Climate.
Ah, yes. I think I read that the other day and I was like, is that not Habeck's job? But he's for climate.
He's for climate. So yeah, the economy and climate. BMWK. Bundesministerium für Wirtschaft und Klima. There we go. Oh my God. I do work in that sector. So what do you want to know about Habeck?
You said that the government has come up with these different ways of trying to save energy. And you said that we have three government parties, the Green Party, the SPD and the FDP, and they each have their own little plan. So what is the Green Party's plan?
This is actually not to save energy. We would love if all of them came up with their ideas for saving energy. Okay. But no, it's to combat the cost of living crisis created by gas prices.
Okay.
So yeah, we got these three plans coming from the three parties who make up the Traffic Light Coalition. So from the SPD, we've got €300 taxed that will be given to each citizen in order to combat, or household. I'm not sure if it's citizen or household actually, or maybe taxpayer.
That's called the Einsparbonus.
Einsparbonus, and that's coming in, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's coming in August. And
that they can leave till the end of the summer. I couldn't have my 300 Einspar... fuck.
I think because a lot of gas bills are coming in September, so people are going to need it around then. And then, so that's one of them. That's the SPD. The second one is the Tankrabatt, which is the tank discount or the petrol discount, and that was come up with by the geniuses in the FPD. And I say that with scornful amounts of sarcasm. So the FPD, so we've got the Transport Minister Volker Wissing and the Finance
Minister.
Minister.
Should have a Transport Minister who's FDP. Like, we should have rules.
It seems like an oversight.
Like, you just want to be a fucking lad in your car. I don't...
Yeah, no, that is because they are the party of having no speed limit on the motorways. That is like a central part of their thing.
I drove on the Autobahn for the first time ever yesterday, but not in a bit where you could go as fast as you wanted.
Yeah, no one tells you that. Actually, there's loads of bits where you can't go as fast as you want.
I was just in and around Berlin in a van yesterday. But it's
on Volker Wissing though, when approached about this, so the tempo limit was sort of a point of conversation a couple of months ago, and lots of people are calling for it because it would save a lot of gas. It would save a lot of petrol.
And
this is a
lives
really
as well. Like
lives,
no one should be driving that fast. We're
money,
not fucking pilot.
But so he was approached about this, and he said he made the very insightful comment. Also sarcasm. Sorry, maybe it doesn't come across in the podcast.
It'll be clear. We've primed our audience about the FDP.
But he said that young people should stop posting pictures of their food on Instagram, and that would be a good way of lessening the amount of energy that is used for servers that host the internet. Oh my God, it's so long-winded. I don't even know I can't even remember what the idea is, but he's saying servers that host the internet use a lot of electricity. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pointless shit that goes on the internet. I'm sure he would count this as that as well. And specifically, if young people stopped putting pictures of their food on the Instagram and the Facebook, then that would be a really great energy savings, and then we wouldn't have to have a speed limit.
Cunt. Like, how do you have a job in the public the public fucking eye, and you're so shit at it, and you say stuff like that, and no one fucking disciplines you?
Twitter did.
Good.
Yeah.
It's that same argument, like, oh yeah, the economy is destroyed and the climate, but like, have you had a lot of avocado toast, millennial? That's why you don't have a house. I'm very sweaty. I'm not usually like, I'm so...
I wasn't sure whether to take the microphone, but I wasn't sure if you finished or not. Anyway.
But you wanted to talk about Robert, so...
Oh yes, sorry.
Sorry. We were going...
Rob.
So the tank about was a different one. But we talked about the tank about recently on the pod. Basically, it kind of was a bit of a failure. Yeah. And they're now even already blaming each other for why it's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And what is the Green Party's plan?
And that's something that you'll probably all be familiar with already, the €9 ticket. Mm-hmm. And we have some initial... There was a report that came out at the end of June to assess what had happened with the €9 ticket. And would you like to hear about the findings?
I really genuinely would. All I've been seeing is pictures of really crowded train platforms with teachers on school trips being like, fuck!
So that will be the around 15% increase in passengers that have happened since the beginning of June. 21 million tickets sold.
That's great.
And if you add that, on top of that was 10 to 11 million people who were subscribers or had these, year-long tickets. So they already had it, and then add on top of that 21 million. So that was above the average for a June. Yeah, passenger numbers went up by around 15%. And they did a analysis of traffic as well in 26 German cities. And out of 26, 23 of them reported less congestion, with the most lessening of congestion happening in Hamburg and Wiesbaden. And they had around 14 to 15% reductions in congestion.
That's great.
It does seem so, right? I mean, people are overall very happy with it. There was a poll that came out that said that the people who had bought it, or people who had already got the €9 ticket, were 89% in favour of it. They really liked it. And that 64% of people within Germany, so not necessarily just people who have bought the ticket, but 64% of Germans are pro it. They are very enthusiastic about it. And there is now growing support for this to be extended and turned into something that can be actually like an annual ticket. There's this number that's starting to come out of the 365 ticket, so €365 for 365 days, so it's €1 a day. That has just been taken up by Vienna. So there's this sense of like a growing movement now towards actually creating some kind of cheap, simple ticket. Because what people like about it most...
It's so simple.
It's simple.
Yeah, there was like a tweet going around. But like, I think the best thing about the €9 ticket is it's just called the €9 ticket, not some like incredibly long German like word. Do we know what the train companies are saying? Because I do feel it's great and I'm 100% for it, but it must be a bit difficult dealing with 15% extra folks on the trains. Or are they all right? They're just like, yeah.
Well, I think so. Some of them have actually increased the number of trains, but only by a very small amount. So there's one train company that increased their trips per month by 250, but they do 22,000 trips a day, so they do 22,000 train rides a day, so it's a very small amount of increases. But what train companies are really signaling right now is that we've had around 15 years of underinvestment in the public transport system. I mean, I think what we're realizing now is like we've had sort of, it's always like, the last 16 years of underinvestment in this and the last 16 years of underinvestment in this. It's like, what the fuck were the CDU even doing, and how the fuck are they now winning elections? Like, what we're realizing now is like how on its fucking knees this country was when
there's a war coming. Don't look at the army. Don't know. There's nothing for you there. Like, right. So I'm just be freezing in September, freezing cold and defending myself.
All the tanks are broken.
Thanks, Merkel.
But she's so charming.
She fucking is. She really had us all fooled.
So yeah, what the train companies are now saying is we've had like a decade of underinvestment. We don't have enough personnel. They've got a personnel issue. They've got an underinvestment issue. They're saying we need more carriages. We need more people. So much more needs to be done in getting actually the infrastructure up to scratch, because that's really what's creating a lot of problems. So in June, there were a lot of scheduled maintenance works that went ahead. And the vast majority of delays and cancellations in trains that people just sort of naturally blamed on the €9 ticket because it was the biggest thing to have happened.
Okay.
That was actually mostly due to planned maintenance works that were going ahead during what was an unexpectedly more busy than usual June. So yeah, I think that's the main message that train companies are really trying to get across. It's like, if you want to keep this going and if you want people to travel at these rates more, then we need far more investment in our infrastructure and in our personnel as well.
Well, what's Vissing going to do about that?
Fuck all.
Fuck all, because he wants to drive around in his dumb car on the Autobahn. In 2022, our fucking transport minister wants to just be able to drive his car as fast as he likes.
It's silly. He's very proud of the €9 ticket, though. Almost like he came up with it himself. He did not. So,
who did come up with the €9 ticket,
Babe,
Izzy?
stop it.
Babes.
I don't think it was Habeck. I want it to be him. I want it to be him so badly.
Let's just pretend it was.
Let's just pretend it was.
He had all the good ideas.
Is that so? Those are the three measures brought in by the Greens, the FDP, and the SPD. I think my favourite so far, even though I have used it for literally nothing, is the €9 ticket.
Mine too. I don't know if that came across. Do you want to talk about Habeck?
Yes. More about Habeck.
Well, you were going to talk about Scholz and Habeck.
Yes.
About how they're different people.
They are. There's one guy called Robert Habeck and there's another guy called Scholz.
Bit like Merkel, Habeck seems to have charmed the whole of the German media.
Oh, yes.
And he seems to be very popular, and he seems to be good at... Well, we talked about this before, but he seems to be very good at kind of explaining simply what the problem is.
Yeah.
And not trying to pretend that that you can just do something that easily. You can say, like, look, it's not as easy as you think, and I have to give you some bad news. He's quite good at saying bad news in a way that you can understand and go, okay, I understand. Whereas most politicians are much more like, trying to pretend that everything's okay and they're in charge and in control, And I don't know, that seems to come across quite well with him as his communication style. Whereas Scholz, recently, when he gets asked questions, what happens, Megan?
Someone said to me, we were doing like Abitur oral exams after the written exams, and someone sent, like, there was a tweet going around being was like, me once in the Abitur oral exam. So he's asked a question by a Deutsche Welle journalist about, like, can you explain what security measures or something could you explain what security measures Germany are assisting Ukraine with or something? And his response was, yeah, I could. And there was a long pause while he looked like a dick. And then he was like, that's it. And the thing is, I know that we were saying he's new in the job. He doesn't know where anything is. He doesn't know to go to who, your key card's not working anymore. What do you do? No one knows. But he has also been in and around there. It's not like he's just a new politician.
He was the mayor of Hamburg for a long time.
But he also had the other big job.
And finance minister.
Yes, that one. Yes. He's been rattling around in that other ministry that now fucking Lindner's probably installing a kicker table in.
I think he's 40 years. I think it's 40 years he's been a politician.
Right, well, he should be less shite at answering questions.
Yeah. And just to directly contrast that with Robert Habeck, shall I?
Yeah.
So
please do.
Robert is deeply good at communication, to a real sort of ridiculous extent, where he had a interview with the Spiegel last week, and they came across as completely charmed, to the point where in one of the pictures in the article, it was a picture of Robert in between these two journalists who were just like, can I get a fucking picture with Robert Habeck? And it's like, are journalists supposed to be in front of the camera? Like, is this like allowed? And he just seemed completely comfortable in that kind of role. And they started off the article rather, sort of ludicrously in a way, with a quote from Willy Brandt and asking Robert Habeck what he thought about this quote, which was about Germans going through hardship and having to stick together through hardship and then ultimately managing to get through it. And they were like, what do you think about that quote, Robert? And he was like, he was very complimentary about the German people. And then afterwards they were like, do you know who said it, Robert? And he was like, I don't actually know. And they were like, it's Willy Brandt, and it's the sense of like, you're the next Willy Brandt, and we're like giving you this platform to like talk about yourself as the next Willy Brandt. Willy Brandt, for those who don't know, was this sort of very, very charming, very charismatic Chancellor of Germany. He didn't last very long because of a plot orchestrated by the East German Foreign Ministry back in the late 60s, early 70s. I think in 1972 he was ousted. But he was the mayor of Berlin. He was an incredibly charming politician. He was also very, he changed Germany in his very short time. He changed Germany and he created this Handel durch Wandel ideology of like dealing with the East, which arguably is, what led us to the dependencies that we have today on Russian gas. But back in those days, it was a way of talking.
Everything looked at in a very long view. It's bound to go wrong at some point.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're still doing the same policy 50 years later, maybe you should get some new people.
He was probably like, I didn't mean you to do it forever. And obviously, if they start being complete dicks, maybe stop.
But I mean, when it started, it was a totally radical position. Like, he was the one who first acknowledged that East Germany was a separate state and needed to be dealt with as a separate state. And I can't really remember the reasons for why that's so significant, but it was really significant at the time. And someone sort of, in the article with Der Spiegel, they even asked him, so are you the next chancellor candidate? And it was just this question. It's just this, like, he has this way of communicating that is seen as so desperate for this current moment when we have this non-communicator in the top job who I don't think it's necessarily because someone should feel sorry for him for not being as good as Robert or not being as good as Merkel. I think he's very arrogant. I think the only time I've ever seen Scholz communicating well has been when he's communicated something appalling. Like when he said that thing about the kids who were protesting, or they weren't protesting, but they were speaking up during an event that he did a few weeks back to this Catholic group of people, and there were some climate protesters within the crowd, and they got up and they said, what are you doing about climate? And he made this really unhelpful comment about how this reminds him of the worst days of Germany, these black-clad protesters, basically insinuating that they were like Nazis trying to stop an SPD leader from making a speech. And he was really cheered, and he had fluid sentences, and he was very animated.
I'm sorry, he did what?
Yeah, it was a very big story quite a few weeks back now, sort of 4 or 5 weeks ago. But it was this, and his press agent couldn't explain what he meant other than Nazis for black-clad protesters, and he failed to define who he was talking about. So obviously the press just took it as he was talking about Nazis, and he was comparing youth climate protesters with National Socialists, which is completely unacceptable. But it was the only time that I've ever seen fluid sentences come out of his mouth that were passionate and that had a sense of urgency to them, and they were saying the most appalling things. And I think underneath it all, that's kind of who he is. Yeah, so yeah, that compared with Habeck is quite stark.
Yeah, I get weird vibes from him. Like, I was just so happy that we didn't have another CDU chancellor, I think. And now I'm like...
But before this turns into total, like, Habeck love parade podcast, can we talk a bit about his ideas? And, like, because he changed his mind a lot of things. For example, on vaccine patents. Last year, when the Green Party was campaigning in the election, they were very much for losing all vaccine patents. And then there was a famous press conference a couple of weeks after the election when Habeck was economy minister, and someone asked him, so are you still in favour of lifting all patents on vaccines? And he said, well, now I've had a conversation. He actually said this. I have had a conversation with a few pharmaceutical companies, and now I think it would not be the best way forward. I mean, he does I guess that's like honest.
Yeah. But
like he is, he changes his mind about things, and he's in the Green Party, and now he's going around, buying gas and fossil fuels from around the Middle East. I mean, it's like, you know, it is. He's kind of in a compromised position. I can understand, because every German economy minister has to sort of look after the German economy. You know, like that's like what it's kind of a part of the job. But he's sort of like, you know, he's still a politician, isn't he?
Yeah, I think that there's a really weird dynamic that's going on currently in German politics, which is that the Greens are having to make the most sacrifices, killing the most amount of their darlings in terms of policies, and yet they are increasing their vote share by the most in state elections. So it's a very strange situation where it's hard to figure out if this is going to have an electoral effect on them or not. And like, barring the electoral effect on the Greens, what has Habeck done? He, in response to the energy crisis posed by Russia, he went on a big shopping spree with LNG, and he's also signed a bill that's going to allow LNG platforms to be built without as many environmental checks and balances to be done in order to build those platforms as fast as possible. He described it as Tesla speed, that he wants those LNG platforms to be built. It's more likely at this point that we'll probably just get a couple of FSRUs, so like floating LNG terminals, and not actually end up, well, it's really unsure, but there's 4 LNG terminals, and right now it looks as if the government is pushing forward to try and build them. Lindner jumps on fossil fuels. Whenever there's an opportunity to pay for something that's to do with fossil fuels, Lindner will throw money at it. But when it's to do with anything else, like improving the health and well-being of society, then he draws back and all claims that the market needs to do its work and we can't as a state provide any kind of support. But he threw 3 billion at the LNG terminals. So yeah, then in March, off we had Habeck going and shaking hands with, you know, Qatari officials, which doesn't look great. And then when asked about it, he claims, well, Qatar has come a long way in terms of human rights, and maybe we shouldn't be judging people based on European values and so forth. So it's really problematic language, but for some reason, because of his way with communications, he's not actually like disturbing the public too much. The other thing he does, which is sort of what I've been sort of really watching very closely, is the replacement electricity bill, which tries to take away electricity that's being produced through gas and switch it to other sources. And that other source, unfortunately, has become coal. So they have decided, or the economics ministry put forward this bill, the emergency replacement bill. And this bill, what it does is it carves out, or it tries to put back online a lot of units of coal-fired power plants that had previously been taken offline in order to be part of the phase down. So there was, before this government came into power, there was a 2038 phase out date for coal in this country. The coalition got elected on the promise that they would move that back 8 years and turn it into 2030. It's not currently in legislation. We haven't seen that date in law. We think it's going to be a piece of legislation that comes out in September, but that's not completely guaranteed. And this replacement law is really problematic in lots of ways, because it designates around 550 to 600 million euros in, you know, state funding, so taxpayer money, to getting these coal plants back online or onto the reserve, or from the reserve onto the electricity grid. And that's, you know, a lot of people can understand it for many respects, because we're at war and because we need to save all this gas. But what a lot of NGOs are pointing out is, okay, fine for hard coal, which is mainly imported from elsewhere, but these lignite mines that Germany has that are, you know, set to destroy another village in September, Lützerath. This is really problematic stuff, because lignite burns much more dirtier than hard coal, and these lignite power plants are really old and they are in really bad shape. And what that means is the investments that they're going to put into these lignite fired power plants are going to be investments that are so expensive, like a new filtration system for one called Janschwälder in East Germany, a new filtration system that's going to cost so much that it's going to be unjustifiable to then in 2024 say, right, we spent 10 million euros on this power plant, but now we don't need it anymore because now we're going straight for renewables, so we're going to phase it down. So it's really problematic. And what sort of, I guess, the climate community and the NGOs and climate think tanks would really put forward is you need not just an energy savings voluntary campaign, you need an energy savings mandatory campaign to cut consumption of gas. And you also need a massive build out of renewables and heat pumps. And you need to do real communication with the public that this is going to be a really hard year.
Yeah.
We can get through it, but getting through it is going to mean an entire nationwide effort to build out renewables because we've lacked the investment in renewables. We've had a lost decade in terms of renewables build out. And as a result, we're in this position. You know, that was the really bold position. I think that was the kind of Ostpolitik Willy Brandt moment for Habeck. But instead, he chose the easy option, which is turn on fucking old, disgusting, dirty coal plants.
And this is something like I find unsurprising, but then also totally baffling, because it plays very much this like idea of the public not wanting, you know, oh, you can't do that, the electorate will never go for it and stuff. And honestly, I think we've shown in the last 2 years like how willing the majority of people are to like suck it up and make huge sacrifices professionally, personally, socially, for the greater good. And I think everyone is worried about climate change. And if people just actually had kind of, you know, like, it's frustrating when someone like Habeck, who has these skills, who has this sort of presumably commitment, can't just go, do you know what? This is what we're going to have to do. It's going to suck, but it is going to mean in 2 years' time, we're going to be in a much better place energy-wise. I don't fucking want taxpayers' money going into some lignite shit show.
Yeah, it does feel like that. It feels like he is taking somewhat the vote-winning way out because it's working, right?
But does it win votes?
Well, we've had 2 state elections, which I know from listening as an avid listener to your podcast that you've already covered in detail, where the Greens tripled their votes in both of them. So we had the Schleswig-Holstein, and then we had the NRW, North Rhine-Westphalia election a week after that. And both times the Greens tripled. And the Greens are really soaring in the polls. So Annalena and Habeck are doing extremely well. Habeck is kind of being talked about as next finance minister, or even some people are sort of like muttering about chancellor. Like, he is kind of becoming that figure in German politics that people are wanting and willing to rally around because of the lack of, I mean, Lindner is a joke. He keeps on coming out with silly policies, advocating silliness at a time when we can't rely on a market to create the amount of coordinated change or coordinated reaction that we need. And everyone understands that. That's not a difficult concept to get into people's heads. The market is unable to act in the same way as a government is able to act in times of crisis. It's not hard to understand that. Lindner keeps on coming out with silliness, like the tank rabat, which everyone can see didn't fucking work.
Yeah, he's not a serious human being.
It's silly.
Like, I'm sorry, like, yeah. But do you think, like, if Habeck actually stuck to his guns and was sort of... It's interesting then, is the success of the Greens due to the fact that they have kind of shifted and people are looking at them going, okay, I was a bit nervous about voting Green before because I thought they were going to take my car away and do all of this radical stuff, but actually I see now that they... Or do they just see 2 politicians in Baerbock and Habeck, like, doing quite a good job? And then...
I think that there's a couple of things to mention here, which is, like, firstly, they've really stuck to their guns on nuclear. So the Greens started out as an anti-nuclear party.
Yeah. And
there would have been, or could have been, possibly an argument to make that, okay, let's just turn back on the old nuclear plants. And there's lots of reasons to not do that. So the nuclear lobby are saying that would be a really good option to do, and that's what the FDP is advocating as well. But then safety analysts are saying, actually, you can't safely turn back on those nuclear plants because of the lack of personnel, and also because we don't have these fuel rods that we need. And those fuel rods are, take years to import and all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot of people who are saying that wouldn't even be possible now.
Okay.
But the Greens have stuck to their guns on it, and they've said, absolutely not, we're not doing nuclear. And some people, like Steffi Lemke, for instance, who's the environment minister, have been called ideological in their decision. But I think that's just German way of like saying sexism through other means.
Ideological has become a byword for kind of like
Hysteria.
Emotional.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, you need to have politicians with ideology. Otherwise, it's just left up to the fucking fascists.
There you go. They also have ideology.
Yes, that's the thing. And
Yeah.
if we don't combat that with other ideology, I hate this fucking pragmatism because we're not pragmatic. Christian Lindner just wants to drive his big boy cars around.
If we were
Like, that's
pragmatic,
not,
we
just
would
because
be
he's wearing a
building
suit and
windmills.
is exactly, and a white man doesn't make him pragmatic. Like, he's just a loon.
If he came out with good ideas, though, then I would definitely spot him as a fucking insane sex symbol. Like, he is a... I can't even...
He did
I
do...
can't even say words.
He did...
anymore.
How is your Megacan, by the way? I'm so warm. I'm drunk now.
I mean, I think I'm, like, nearly through. I can feel it.
So you drink all of it?
I'm drinking all
good.
of it.
I finished mine ages ago.
Really?
Oh, you always do.
I'm just, yeah. I'm a guzzler. What can I say?
I just want to say one more thing that the Greens are doing.
Okay.
Right, so like we have some long-term or mid-term to long-term goals that the Greens are not backing down on. So 2030 is apparently not in play in terms of coal phase out, i.e. they're going to stick to their guns with 2030.
Right.
I don't know, like that's the Greens up against potentially the FDP and the SPD saying carry on. But they're saying it's not in play, so like don't worry about 2030. And then also Habeck came out with his Easter package back in March, which was a package of measures or plans to increase renewables by 300%, so triple the amount of renewables that we have online by 2030. Yeah. So that's good.
But you know who's his enemy in that? Markus Söder.
Oh,
in
don't
Bavaria.
fucking bring Söder. I can't deal with him today.
Because they are, correct me if I'm wrong, they are at loggerheads over the distances between windmills in Bavaria. Well, we mentioned that before, but yeah, it's that is the thing, isn't it?
Well,
he's gonna do,
yeah. I mean, so what Habeck has said is he will bring in a 2% law on the federal level if states don't comply. Yeah. So it's kind of this thing of like either you comply and you get to choose your 2% of land, or you don't comply and the federal government will come in and choose it for you.
Okay. Well, then that's, yeah.
He is kind of strong-arming some stuff, but it's not enough. And I think that Habeck, just like you were saying, Megan, earlier, like you never know if you're actually going to support like a potential neoliberal monster. And he's so charming, and he's
usually the ones I fancy turn out to be monsters.
Yeah,
I'm
getting
concerned.
very Tony Blair vibes from Habeck.
Oh my god, I accidentally watched some BBC News the other day because I've got the Beebs to watch Wimbledon, and then sometimes it comes on and Tony Blair was on, like calling
everywhere
for a return to centre, and he looks like his own resuscitated vampire corpse. Yeah, definite sort of Blairite vibes. If you had Robert's ear,
oh yes,
you're there Sunday morning, he's reading the paper in bed, shirt off.
Yes. Oh, babe, the stakes.
What are you saying to him? Like, what do you think we need to be doing in Germany? What are our...
Oh man. Okay. Well, if I take my eyes off of that insane image. Okay. So mandatory energy savings plan of 10 to 15%. Energy efficiency being mandated in all new buildings. Gas boilers being stopped for installations within the next not 3 years but 1, and heat pumps being rolled out on a massive scale. So
what is a heat pump?
A heat pump is a pump that generates hot water and heating through electricity. So a heat pump is something that will green with the electricity grid, like an electric car, right? A lot of people are like,
I see.
Electric cars aren't actually green because they get all their power from coal plants.
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
that's only because that is that. Yeah, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And they're also air conditioning as well. So a heat pump can work in both ways as an air conditioner, and
They sound
also
great.
they're amazing. Like, as soon as you get into heat pumps, you're like, why the fuck have we done this? This is if we were rational creatures.
This is the thing, and everyone
Fucking
likes to talk
Christian
about these
Lindner.
like politicians. Well, you know, you have to be pragmatic.
It's like, if we were
No one
pragmatic,
is.
we would be doing all this fucking
Literally
cool stuff.
nobody is, apart from probably like Klaus Muller and these kind of people and science. These are the people we need to like listen to, like the actual experts in these fields. And obviously there's like biases and stuff that comes in there as well. I can't make rational decisions about sort of politics things, so I have to just look at like, okay, well, what are the real experts saying? And what's kind of in line with my party's values and the people who voted for me, like what do they want me to do? And then you do that. You can't just go with your own head.
Should we begin to wrap up here?
Yeah.
It's kind of a bumper episode.
It is. It's always nice when we have Izzy. Maybe she'd like to come back all the time.
Sorry, I downed my last goal.
Good.
There you go.
It's quite hard to get the very last bit out of a mega.
I think I might have released gas from my mouth a few times. Like,
I do that
whilst I
all
was
the
talking.
Don't worry. Our listeners are used to it. Izzy, thank you very, 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 very much. And I'd really suggest that everyone goes along to your show on
Tour.
on the 16th at Martin Luther at 2.
Yeah.
And then after that,
What are they going to do after that?
you are going to come, if you would like, to we're doing a live show as part of Podfest Berlin on the 16th at 4:15.
Well, that is our load-in time.
Oh God, you can come and watch me stress.
So if you want to come and watch us setting up, come at 4:15. But if you want to see the actual show, maybe more like 10 to 5 o'clock. We might need a bit of time. We've got a live musician.
I don't think it's going to take us 45 minutes to set up.
Where are you guys
We've
doing
only
it?
got 70 minutes.
I can finish the tour like where you guys are doing it.
Oh,
So that
where are we
it's like
doing it?
In the noisy rooms in Rovallerstrasse
Ah.
in Friedrichshain.
Okay, I'm not going to finish there. You should definitely come to my tour and then go straight over
Just
and watch Conrad
hot
and
foot
Megan.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So am I. It's going to be brilliant. We'll have special guests and a special musician.
Yes. And megas. Obviously.
Can everyone drink megas? Will you have
Yeah.
megas for sale?
We did at the last show we did.
Yeah, but we were in a bar.
Yeah, we were in a bar. And it was like 11 o'clock at night. I don't know. We need to think, but
I think
can always just
everyone
carry
should be
one in.
progressively getting drunk.
I don't know how anyone listens without it, frankly. The news is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute delight, Izzy. Thank you very, very, very much.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Thank you very much. That was great.
Thanks very much for having me.
No, it's good. Bye.
Bye, everyone.